Welcome to Let's Talk TCI Real Estate. Thank you for joining me on another beautiful Thursday afternoon. As usual, I would like to say to those who are listening, please share the page. Today, I do have a special guest on, and we will be speaking about the auction process. And that's, auctioning of your home, your land, that process. So if you know someone who is interested in hearing about this subject today, please ask them to tune in on Let's Talk TCI Real Estate. I'm looking forward to the conversation that we will be having today. And like I said, I do have a guest with me on Zoom, and I am going to, without any delay, I am going to ask Miss Louise Malcolm to please introduce herself, just say a little bit about her for our listening audience. Miss Malcolm.
Thanks, Vanika. Hi, everyone. As Vanika said, my name is Louise Malcolm, and I'm a senior associate with Miller Simons O'Sullivan. I've been practicing for 13 years, and I've got a bit of a wide practice, but it includes conveyancing, debt collection, assisting lenders and banks with documents for their loans, intellectual property, immigration, business licenses, and other interesting things. And we're happy to be on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you, Louise. So just for the benefit of everyone who's watching, I thought it would really be fitting to speak about this process today. You know, from time to time, we see advertisements in the newspaper, whether it be from lending institutions such as the banks, private companies, about auctions that are happening. And of recent, I've actually had one or two customers who have actually reached out to me asking me as a real estate agent about the process. And I really couldn't answer their question. So what better way other than to reach out to someone who is a specialist in this area who can assist us in answering all of these questions that you may have. So I'm going to dive right into the questions. And of course, if you are listening, if you have a question, put it in the comments section. And after the show, if we have an opportunity, we will go back over the comments and try to get those questions answered for you. And also we will pass on Ms. Malcolm's contact information, just in case there's something you want to speak to her about in reference to this subject today. So the first question for you, Ms. Malcolm, I would like to ask you, for what reason would a lender have to put a property up for auction?
Well, a lender will consider this auction of an auction to recover the funds of an outstanding loan. If a loan is secured by property, then that's because an easy way to try and get the loan repaid by getting the property sold.
So at what point in time do they have the right to put this property up for auction, or do they have to get consent from the court before they are able to do so? And if yes, what's an approximate time frame usually the courts may take to get this process started?
So the loan will need to be in default first. If you're paying, then there's no reason for the lender to consider an auction. So once the loan is in default, then the lender is entitled to commence enforcement proceedings and ultimately try to get the property sold. You'll have to issue the essential demand letters and notices pursuant to the registered land ordinance, and that typically takes about 7 to 8 months. So once you've gone through that process, then the lender will have the ability to list the property for auction. There's no consent needed for the auction. You just need to be able to satisfy that you have issued the notices and complied with the notice periods connected to those notices before proceeding with the auction.
So basically, but based on the time period, you're saying that that person who owns that property actually has a sufficient amount of time to try to bring their arrears up to date before this process even happens.
Yes, definitely. I think the demand letters generally have a 14-day notice period, and the actual notices, the specific notices under the ordinance, they have a 3-month notice period. So once they're served, they have every right to speak to their banker and see how they can get the arrears settled.
Okay, that's good to know. So how actually, for an individual who would like to participate in the auction, how do they go about registering for that auction?
There's no registration process. Auctions are public, so you just show up. at the right place and time. And if the property is you're interested in the property, you make a bid.
Okay. And so, because you're talking about making a bid, can you take us to the process of what actually happens at the auction? Well, I mean, like, I have a few questions in reference to it. Probably we can go by it step by step. Like, what does the bidding price start at?
So the bank or the lender, they would usually set a reserve price. They will review the market value for the property and determine a price that would be sufficient. And the auctioneer typically starts just below it and would notify the bidders when they've reached a successful bid or valid bid. And it's up to the bidders to continue bidding until the best person wins.
Okay, so I mean, I like what you said about market value. Did So the bank is not going to just be trying to get what is owed, but they're going to be trying to get market value.
Right, that's correct. They usually get valuations prior to the auction so that they're aware of the current market value for their property.
Okay, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the conception a lot of times about auctioning a property is about getting it cheap, and so persons want to be like, oh, I want to attend that auction for that reason. But I'm happy that you said that true market value is tried to, if that the person tries to obtain true market value at first.
That's correct.
So, what type of deposit is actually expected by the person who is successful at the bidding process?
A 10% deposit. And that would need to be paid by the successful bidder by end of day of the auction.
And then, go ahead.
There's also an auctioneer fee that our lenders usually request. Then that would also need to be paid, a fee to go towards the auction cost. And that would also need to be paid at the same time as the deposit.
So then when is the balance of the purchase price due?
Within 30 days of the auction.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, that's also a good, for me, a good understanding, because again, there's always that concept, expectation that everything needs to be paid in full because it's an auction. So within
Right.
30 days. Okay. So It's just similar to a regular real estate transaction process.
Yes, just that you need to have your funds available that day to secure the transaction.
Okay. Do you have to be a cash buyer?
You don't. Obviously, that would help. As it's a short window for completing the transaction, it would be preferable if the purchasers had pre-approval of a loan, so that when they're commencing the transaction, they don't have to now go and seek financing. They already have something already put in place, so that the completion of the transaction is pretty straightforward.
Okay.
And we usually try to advertise at least 3 to 4 weeks prior to the auction to give people a chance to obviously see the ads and have a look at the properties that they could be interested in, and then speak to their banks if necessary, so that things can be put in place in as much as possible before the auction takes place.
Okay. I mean, that's quite good to know. What about for someone who actually wants to send a representative to the auction process? Is that possible for someone to bid on behalf of someone else? And if yes, what's the procedure for that?
It is possible. The same rules apply. The deposit and auctioneer fee would need to be submitted by the end of the day. We would need to know who the purchaser really is, obviously, so that the documentation can be prepared. But the ultimate bidder would need to ensure that the funds are placed with us so that we can proceed with the transaction.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So how many times can the same property be auctioned? For example, if the process is not successful?
It's really up to the lender. It may be by law, you only need to have one auction generally, and then you can apply to the court for order for sale by private treaty. But some lenders have taken the view to relist properties for auction on the, just to give it a better chance of being sold to the wider public. So it's really what the lender chooses to do.
Okay, that's okay. So then, can a bid be made on a property before the auction process?
Yes, it's possible to submit a written bid. It'll be a sealed bid, and we will keep it sealed until the auction. We'll provide the documents to the auctioneer, and the bid will be read out at the auction. And then those attending can bid against that bid if they choose.
I guess that's a disadvantage because they won't be able to change their bid since it's already a pre-prepared bid.
That is true unless they submit several bids. It's really up to them how they choose to do that. But it would be beneficial if the person or a representative can attend to be part of the full process.
So that opens room for another question. If they are submitting several bids, how would they know which bid that they did to put forward first?
They would have to give instructions to bid. This is bid 1, bid 2, but at the end of the day, those attending can always outbid the written bid. So it's probably easier to ensure that you have a chance by attending or having a representative attend for you.
Okay. Another question I would like to ask, because this is a COVID period, do they have an option for online bidding?
That is generally not in place for, at least we have not had to do that for our lenders. I've heard of it, but usually with unusual properties that pretty much require an international interest. But for the normal property, it's not, right now, it's not a thing.
It's not available.
Not yet.
Okay. So I have this question. With the market and the Turks and Caicos being so hot now, we call it a seller's market, and inventory being very low, I can understand why buyers may be searching by all means for additional properties that are not listed for sale on the market, therefore wanting to bid at an auction. Can you advise of any additional benefits there is actually to bidding at an auction versus just waiting for something else to become available?
Well, it could be a property that you may not usually see on the regular market, or a hot commodity property. So it's probably worthwhile jumping in as quickly as possible to have a chance at it before it goes on the market. And then by the time you find out about it, it's already been snatched up. So it's definitely worth considering the auctions just to see what properties unexpectedly come up for sale that you may not usually have had the chance to consider in a usual manner. Okay. And then also the purchase price may be more favorable at an auction rather than if it's listed generally. So that would obviously be pleasing on someone's pocket to have a better purchase price to work with.
Yes, definitely. We're always looking for a better purchase price. I'm just going to take a quick moment just to pause for a second, just to say again, if you have any questions or if you have any comments, please put it in the comments section of the feed. And definitely after the broadcast, if we have an opportunity, definitely we will go through those comments and answer anything, any questions that you may have. Also, comments are welcome. If you've gone through the auction process before and you want to share something about the process that you have experienced, please feel free to do so, because it's only to the benefit of us and also those who are looking to actually be a part of an auction process in future, that they will know exactly what they need to do. All right. So a question I have is for persons, is there any point in time while this auction is going on, if a person decides they want to reclaim their property, that they can do so even though the auction process has already been, when I say good, I mean published in a newspaper and it's supposed to be held at a certain particular time.
Yes, any borrower, any debtor is free to liaise with their bank once they're aware that their properties are for auction. If they're in a position to clear their arrears or come to some agreement with the bank, then or the lender has that right to withdraw a property from the auction list before the auction takes place. So it would, if there's a justifiable reason why the property should not be listed for auction, then it would be up to the borrower to speak to the bank as quickly as possible to put matters into place.
Okay, and then of course the company or who's putting on the auction, I guess, will send a general notice out to everyone to let them know that auction has been canceled. Then.
Correct. Or if, let's say, there are multiple properties listed for auction and one property is removed, then the auctioneer would notify the attendees that the lender has chosen to remove X property from the auction list.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just generally not about a specific property or anything. Just do you find that this is a real good process? When I say good process, I mean in terms of getting the property sold.
It's definitely a way for any and everyone to have a chance at a property. Properties are sold as is. So once you're aware of something, it's up to you to decide if that's a property you want to get, and you have the chance to do your research to ensure there are no boundary issues, encroachment issues that are in place that perhaps you may not want to deal with or you're fine with. But it's up to you to decide if that's the property for you. But it's definitely a good way to find out about other properties that, like I say, you may not have had a chance to, would not have had a chance to consider initially. So it becomes a win-win if you do end up getting something unexpectedly.
Right. Okay. So I have one last question for you. Of course, you are the expert. Is there anything about the auction process that you think is very crucial or beneficial for those listening to understand about the process? Because I may not ask all the right questions, but you may have expectation of the general public when they attend an auction. Is there anything that you think you can throw out there that is necessary that we must know about the process that we haven't spoken about?
Well, definitely do your research beforehand so that you're at least aware where the property is, and speak to your bank in case you do need the financing so that you're able to proceed with the transaction confidently, and you're not put out of pocket unnecessarily if that's not the property for you. There is a hesitation, I believe, with being in a smaller community where everyone does know, generally everyone, being aware of who owns that property and being unwilling to consider the property for auction on the basis that you may be kicking out someone that you know, but at the same time, properties are available for auction, and this is a process that's by law available to any lender to recoup any outstanding funds. So everyone's encouraged to consider a property for auction. It's a way to get something for yourself and at least help a bank or a lender settle outstanding debts.
Okay, sounds good. I just would like to say, I would like to say that, just for anyone listening, again, this is something I usually say during most of the shows that I have, just as a reminder, when we speak about topics like this one, it's not that we are trying to say, to people or to not for them to recover their properties if it's in the hand of an auction, as such, but it's for persons to be educated about the process so that if you fall in that position, you know what to do. or if you are interested in something like this, you know what to do. And so that's really what it is about. So I don't want, because we do have a person from time to time, saying that, okay, people are trying to kick people out of their homes, et cetera, et cetera, when you start thinking real estate. But this is not what this show is about. It's about education, about the process, so that no matter what side of the fence you are on, you can make a more informed decision about how to go about with that process. All right. Do you have any closing words before before we're finished?
Well, I want to thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate the invitation, and I hope I can see a lot of people at my next auction, and we can get some matters done.
Yes.
If you have any other questions, like I said, please pass on my contact details so that I can liaise with anyone directly if necessary.
Yes. Well, can I ask you to please let us know what your contact details are?
Well, my email address is lcm@mslaw.tc. Like I said, I work with Miller Simons O'Sullivan, so you're free to call if you wish to speak. Our number is 946-4650, and I'll be happy to answer any queries that anyone has.
Thank you. And thank you once again, Louise, for being a participant of this show today. I actually learned a lot because, like I said, I did have questions and I could not answer them to persons who have asked me about it. But now I feel much more inclined and better to be able to speak confidently about the process. All thanks to you. I appreciate you coming on the show. Like I said, I appreciate all my guests that are coming on the show. And I will say this one last time. I have had a number of persons who've reached out, and they are finding these shows very informative when they are thinking about anything that's real estate related process. So thank you so much once again.
You're welcome.
And to our listening audience, as usual, I will say to you, have an enjoyable rest of the week. Stay safe and remain blessed. Thank you. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this show belong solely to Let's Talk TCI Real Estate and not that of Keller Williams TCI or any of its affiliates. Any action you take upon the information provided on this show is strictly at your own risk, and Let's Talk TCI Real Estate guests or hosts will not be liable for any losses and damages in connection with the use of the material. I am not an investment advisor, broker, or dealer.